Hey there, today I have an order summary video, and in this video I'm going to break down the two orders that I placed with Mile High Comics. This is the companion video to unboxing episode 194, and this was another like tale of two orders. I think that, hopefully I was clear during the unboxing. I literally reached over to my stack of unopened Mile High orders and I just grabbed two orders, so that it's not like these two orders were related in some way or they had some sort of significance. They were placed almost 7 months apart, June 2nd and December 20th, 2023. And I'll make a few observations before I get into the numbers in the spreadsheet. There's a clear difference between, I think, sometimes when I'm placing orders, and it's not FOMO, but it's just like I'm in the mood to buy some comics or something, or I'm in the mood to place a Mile High order and I'm looking for books. I'm almost like looking for specific deals or books that I think could have some value or some potential. And the second order is more around, I would say, value that kind of presents itself to me in a way where, as I'm doing kind of like my daily comic book value pick lookups for Instagram, sometimes they're just books that I see that are available on Mile High Comics, and if I see enough of them kind of grouped together, I'll jump over to Mile High and I place the order. And that was the one from December. The one from June really looks like I was reaching for something, or maybe trying to find some books that weren't there. But then I look and say, well, the Vanguard Illustrated #2 was also part of that. And so I feel like maybe I was a bit more strategic, or I did have some more thought put into the order. At that time, I think I was just picking up Vanguard Illustrated #2 almost in every order, every other order. It was just sitting there at a really good price. But as I show you kind of the breakdown and what I ultimately decided to do with these books, I think it'll be pretty clear that there was one order that I feel like was more typical, and then another order that maybe was a reach. The other thing I will say too is, man, these conditions are random, really random. And that's part of the negative feedback that I've received about Mile High over the years, is that, someone will have placed an order, they reach out to me and they'll say, hey, I ordered some books, I watched your videos, and they're complete rubbish. Like, I just get them, and it's just very disappointing. First of all, I will say it's not my fault that that happens, and that also happens to me. And you'll see the grades of these, the kind of the grade averages, I think, and it's almost like in reverse. There was one order that I placed that felt really random, but the grades were higher, and the other one I did feel like I was placing more of a strategic order or a typical order, and then the books didn't quite grade out, and there was some disappointment there, with one of the grades even falling below the initial near mint range of Mile High Comics, which is 8.5. So let's move to the spreadsheet and take a look at the breakdown of the two orders. The first one is at the top, ordered on June 2nd, 2023. I was invoiced $94 for the 7 books in this order. And then the second order placed December 20th, 2023. I was invoiced $190 for that order. Unlocked free shipping on both, just paid for the insurance to get those books sent to me securely by FedEx. So you'll take a look at the grades here. You'll see the average of 9.071 for the first order, definitely below the 9.2 average for me personally with Mile High Comics. And then the second order, 8.733 on that one, really driven by the 7.0. I think if I take that one out and we recalculate these averages, we'll see it does at least get closer to a 9.0, but still below the average. So roughly 9.0. There's that one outlier kind of dragging down the second order, but still 9.0 is not near mint. And I understand near mint apparently is subjective. It's not scientific. I disagree, obviously, but that's what usually people who get upset with my videos tell me. But let's look at the cover price fair market value for these and start to compare the potential value add across the orders. I'm going to start moving to the right, and then you'll also kind of see what I ended up ultimately doing with these orders. You'll see the total cost here for each order adding up to 94 and 190, and I take the money I spent on insurance and distribute it across the books. And then here is the raw value add, or loss in this case across the board, both raw and CGC value, if I were to send these books in for grading. A loss of $25 on the raw books from the first order, and a loss of $29 on the second one. If I were to send these books to CGC as is, it would be a loss of $136 and a loss of $68. Now, hopefully my disappointment didn't shine through in the video. It definitely happened while I was grading. I'm going to go back to the grades here just for a second, and you can kind of see what I'm talking about. Yes, there was that 7.0, but here's some others. The G.I. Joe Special Missions, I kind of fell in love with that cover. I even used it as the thumbnail for the unboxing video. That book got a 9.0. It was heavily creased, also had some color breaks on that. I didn't pay much to acquire it, $6.43 total, but that book is available online at cover price. It's not some special rare variant or hard to find. It does say subscription edition, so there was some requirement to initially buy the book, but it's available in many places. You do not have to buy or overbuy that book from Mile High Comics. And was really bummed about that, but then also realized I didn't need to pick that up from Mile High. So that was kind of the beginning of the disappointment. And then also Brave and the Bold, I don't know exactly why I picked up those two books, other than, yes, there's potential for both of them in a 9.8. Maybe my thought process back then was a little bit like I was approaching the Marvel team-up books, where, you know, in that 8.5 to 9.4, there's not a ton of value. They're kind of commons, if you will. But then if you can get a 9.6 or a 9.8, the value really, really jumps on those early 80s books. But they didn't grade out. 9.2 on the 183 and an 8.5 on the 186. And again, looking at the cover price, fair market value, and the CGC value, just goose eggs on these three books. $0. 15 on a 9.2, obviously not worth grading. New Avengers 40, as predicted, that one just tanked. Not only was it a bad spec book, it didn't even grade out. I gave it a 9.0. Cover price, fair market value is a $3 book. I paid $17.93 to buy a $3 book at a 9.0. Really disappointing. Uncanny Avengers number 7, the Rogue variant, that's very similar to the G.I. Joe Special Missions. Basically the same story. Fell in love with the cover, wanted to grab it, didn't need to buy it at Mile High Comics. Readily available in many places online, eBay included, and overpaid for a $3 comic. I spent $12.43. Almost embarrassing at this point that I'm paying that much when that book is probably really worth somewhere between $2 to $3, or even $5 in as a 9.8 candidate potentially. I just like the cover. I know it's, people say buy what you love, buy what you like, but this is why you don't do that. You don't just buy what you like, because then you end up making bad choices like this. However, what saved me is, once again, if I leverage my theory of buy what you know, which is I know Vanguard Illustrated number 2 is available in Mile High. It was available for a lesser price up until a couple of months ago. I don't know if they caught on to me. I don't want to take credit for that, but I think there was definitely some conversation or some happenings where Mile High realized, maybe across the board, to increase the prices on all Dave Stevens books. Now, I don't think that it was me or anybody watching my videos that caused that. I think Mile High just realized in general that even though the market was continuing to kind of drift off and correct or bottom out or whatever, that the Dave Stevens books actually were taking off. That Seduction of the Innocent 3D1, the value of that slab keeps going up, as is like Alien Worlds, Planet Comics, Vanguard Illustrated. So this ended up actually saving the order because it graded out as a 9.4. There is some light creasing, some maybe faint spine ticks on the back that I believe could be pressed out. And so I indicated that this book could be pressed. Now, just to look at the first order very quickly, I indicated that that book could be pressed. And then what I did was use my formulas to figure out what kind of grade bumps are we looking at. And then ultimately, the decision engine column here, column AO, the decision engine column here is telling me, go ahead and press that book. You'll see the other ones I say create listing. I just don't want those comics. Part of it is not so much that they're bad books. It's just that I'm upset with myself. And a lot of times if I feel like I've made a bad purchase, or I buy some books and they don't grade out, and I'm scratching my head. Why did I place this order? What did I do wrong? I find that one of the best things that I can do is try to sell the books for as little as possible and just get them away from me. Like, just try and get some of the negativity, that negative energy away. And it helps kind of replenish. Yes, I'm taking a loss, but hopefully the gain off of Vanguard Illustrated 2 will offset all of the losses and then some. So it ended up being an okay order overall, but really thanks to that one book. Now, on to some of the details with the second order. As I mentioned, that Weird War Tales did not grade out. It was in really rough shape. I splurged on that one. I paid $33.87 for that book, for that 7.0. That's something that, I would see graded as a 6.0 on Infinity Comics and maybe win it for somewhere between $4 to $6. And that's honestly why I've been doing a lot more auctioning on Infinity Comics, because I feel like if I'm going to gamble on the condition of some of these books, I may as well gamble at auction for a lot less. And I think that's part of the complaint. I'm just like arguing against Mile High right there. But when you look at something like Vanguard Illustrated, if that book were scanned by Infinity Comics and listed, there's no way that ends at $22.93. It's probably ending somewhere between $60 and $80. And then the risk is too high to send it into CGC, because if it doesn't get the 9.8, then it's a break even or a potential loss. And so you're kind of going back and forth between figuring out when it is worthwhile to have those scans and look at more specific grades, even if the grades I think are incorrect. At least it gives you kind of a general ballpark, whereas Mile High is clearly all over the place in terms of a definition for near mint. Now, I could have contacted Mile High and said that, hey, not only did I get a 7.0, I assigned an 8.0 to Transformers 6, so I got two books under the 8.5. I could have then went through their customer support and returned those two books for a full refund, and that would have replenished about $50 from this order, but I took too much time to open it, and now I feel kind of dumb. And again, just trying to get rid of some of this negative energy. And we'll probably end up trying to find a replacement copy for Weird War Tales 35. It's on my radar now. Maybe it shows up in a future Infinity Comics auction and I can replace it that way. And then we'll try and sell this one for a few bucks to replenish some of the money lost on that book. And yeah, Transformers 6, I love that Shockwave Megatron cover. Disappointing that got an 8.0. Not much of a loss from a fair market value perspective, as I paid $13.87. It's worth $12, so it will have some value as is, even if it is an 8.0. Sandman 33, that was the book that came without a board. That was rough at an 8.5. So was Marvel Team Up 64. Don't worry, I didn't skip Marvel Team Up 78 on accident. I'll come back to that. Hawkeye #1, the highest graded book across these two orders as is, in a 9.6. So I was happy about that. And you can see the raw book value in that grade, $42, $62 CGC in a 9.6. I did pay a lot to acquire it. So when I show you my decision on that one, that's why the decision is what it is, because it cost me almost $31 to acquire that book. I was disappointed in Black Hammer #1. That's a 9.2. I really wanted to kind of sneak that in a high grade because I think that has potential. Black Hammer was optioned, I think, in 2019, so I wasn't buying it thinking that it's going to show up on Netflix tomorrow. After 5 years of that option news, there's still no news on Black Hammer. But when I see option news on independents, what that tells me is that there's something to that story. There's something interesting there. So even from a comic book collectability standpoint, readability, Black Hammer is something like I would probably see if there's a digital collected edition and read it. And so that's kind of how I use the option news. I try not to overdo it and go like Something is Killing the Children style and just go crazy and heavily invest in it. I usually just use it as maybe a tip to check out the story and read it. But let me get to one last thing, Man Thing. I was on that hot streak. I was 3 for 3 Man Thing #1s. All 3 came from Mile High Comics. All 3 got pressed, and they ended up getting CGC 9.8s. And this one broke my streak, unfortunately. It's a 9.0. It does have color breaks on it. I don't think there's a way to improve it beyond a 9, so that's unfortunate. And I've already indicated that I'd like to move on from that copy just because I have 3 graded copies already. I don't need a 4th, and I certainly don't need one less than a 9.8, so I'm going to leave that one raw and see if I can get something for it. Now, the last bit of decisioning for this order, you can also see which books needed a press there. You can see the grade bumps if they did get pressed, and here are the final decisions on these. Just 2 books to move forward with, and yes, Marvel Team Up 78, I got another copy. I think it's pressable, and I am really looking forward to that auction that closes today, because that's going to tell me, that's really going to shift the fair market value. Once that sale gets into GPA, cover price, and go collect, then all of them are going to adjust the fair market value for that 9.8. It is going to drop significantly. It's showing me right now it's an $860 9.8, and that sale is probably going to end somewhere around half that. I still think at $400, that is a great 9.8 to potentially sell. I don't know if I would want to collect that book slabbed already. I'm not sure who's buying that in a 9.8. Maybe somebody who's putting together a 9.8 Marvel Team Up run. I don't know. But it's not a book I'm interested in holding on to in a 9.8. And here I got another copy, 9.4 as is, with some creasing, particularly like finger bend type creasing. So I think that's going to press out nicely, and I'm fingers crossed I have another 9.8 candidate. The other book that saved me, Transformers number 4, can also be pressed, and I believe that that one needs just a little bit of a professional presser's touch, and I think I have a 9.8 candidate on my hands there. If not, a 9.6 of that one is still 111 and 50 cents. So I think that that was a really nice pickup, and I lucked out with that. Looking at Hawkeye real quick, when I mentioned before, like, there's no decision on this, so that's just going into my personal collection, and I'm just going to save it as is. I think I have another copy somewhere, and I may compare the two to see if I do want to send one in. But what I end up doing is I look at what it cost me to acquire the book, and then what I'm basically doing is trying to assess the risk against the value if I were to further invest in the book. And what this is telling me is you've already spent enough on it. There's no reason for you to spend more on it. So either keep it in your PC, try to upgrade it, look at your other copies, do something else with it. Whereas when I see press light up, it goes right into my pile to send off to either the Comic Doctor or Palm Beach Comic Presser. So that was the results from those 2 orders that I placed with Mile High Comics. And while overall I'm disappointed, if I can take the 3 books that need a press, and let's just pretend for a second that they all come back as a 9.8, then it looks like this is very successful. Now, in reality, I would have to sell one of those 3 to cover the cost of the 2 orders, and then in that case, I'm really only keeping 2 of them, and I've lost one, so does that make sense? And you might just say to yourself, well, why can't you just buy those 3 books? And if you just buy those 3, buy what you know, then you'd be better off. And for some reason, I can't do that. I will not allow myself to just kind of hone in on those values that I see on Mile High and just buy those. I try to. Man Thing number 1 is a good example. Weird War Tales 35, Transformers 6. Like, I am trying to buy the value picks, but those are books that I haven't purchased before from Mile High. I'm not very familiar with it. It's not an exact science. Man Thing number 1, I was like, I'll just buy more. That book is hitting all day long. And I have a feeling if I went and said, okay, Vanguard Illustrated 2 looks like I'm on a hot streak, I'll just go buy that one, even though it's, I think, at least twice expensive now as what I used to pay for it. They could come back and they could be dinged, blunted corners and so forth. So it's just not an exact science. And what I end up doing is having to place orders like this. You are more likely to pull out a gem if you are buying 6, 7, 8, 10 books at a time. You are more likely to get a book where you look at it and go, okay, there it is. That's the book that needs a little bit of attention, that could be a 9.8 candidate. It could be that high grade copy that I'm seeking out. But unfortunately, you just don't know. And if you tell me, well, you need scans, when I look at auctions and I look at scans and I see books and then I get them back and I have an example, he's right over there, that Amazing Spider-Man, I can't even point at it, the Amazing Spider-Man 346. Come on, Venom, there you are. The scan looked perfect. I'm like, I'm going to get myself a 9.8 candidate. And when I got it back, the bottom corner has creasing and it's really faint, but you hold it up to the light and you shift it, it's stuff that you just don't see in the scan. So in closing, I would just say it's all a gamble. There's always risk involved when you're buying online, whether there's a scan or not. And unfortunately, at least for me, I really have a hard time of just buying that one book, checking out, paying for shipping, having it arrive, and just saying, okay, that's the book, that's the 9.8 candidate. Because if it's not, if I just bought Weird War Tales 35 and it came back a 7, then I might think to myself, well, I'm never buying from Mile High Comics ever again. So I think now I'm going to quiet all of these comic book voices that I have in my head. I'm going to leave you there with the 2 order results to review. And I would say just my final takeaway is just that I balanced my disappointment with these 2 orders with the fact that I think Vanguard Illustrated 2, Transformers 4, and Marvel Team Up 78 are 9.8 candidates if they are sent to the right presser, they get in the right hands, and if they do, it ends up kind of being about $600 to $800 of value just for those 3 books, which definitely covers the cost of these 2 orders and then some. Let me know what you think about these books, about the order summary, about my insanity for continuing to be a customer of Mile High Comics. I welcome all of it. Thanks for watching, happy collecting, and see you next time.